Most people planning to move to Australia make the same mistake. They look up the minimum wage, check apartment prices, and assume they'll be fine. 6 months later, half of them are heading back home in debt. In this video, I'm going to show you the real numbers, not the ones you want to hear, but the ones that will determine whether your move actually works out. Welcome to the channel. This is where we cover everything nobody explains before you arrive in Australia: finances, real cost of living, the tax system, housing. If you're planning the move or you're already there and want to understand the system better, subscribe because you're going to need this information. Before we get into the numbers, I want to be upfront with you. These figures vary depending on which city you're moving to, what visa you're on, and your lifestyle. But I'm going to give you the most realistic scenarios so you can do your own calculations. Let's start at the very beginning. How much money do you need in your account before buying that plane ticket? The general rule most immigration consultants recommend is having at least 3 months of living expenses saved before you arrive. But 3 months of expenses in Australia is a very different number than you might think. Let's look at the most common scenario. One person arriving in Sydney or Melbourne. The first major expense is housing. To rent a room in a shade apartment in Sydney, you're looking at between 300 and 450 Australian dollars per week. Yes, per week, not per month. Rent in Australia is charged weekly. On top of that, you'll need to pay a bond upfront, which is typically 4 weeks of rent. So just to secure a room, you need between 1,200 and 1,800 Australian dollars available immediately. Now, add your monthly living costs. Food for one person, cooking at home, runs around $400 to $600 per month. Public transport in Sydney using the Opal card, commuting to and from work, costs around $50 to $80 per week. A decent mobile plan with data starts at around $30 per month. Doing the quick math, just to cover rent, food, transport, and a phone plan in Sydney, you need approximately 2,500 to 3,500 Australian dollars per month. 3 months of that, plus the apartment bond, brings you to between 9,000 and 12,000 Australian dollars as a recommended minimum reserve to arrive in Sydney or Melbourne. In Brisbane, Perth, or Adelaide, those numbers drop by around 20 to 30%. I'll leave links to cost of living calculators in the description so you can run your own numbers. Now let me talk about the expenses almost nobody accounts for, and that catch a lot of people completely off guard. The first is health insurance. If you're on a student visa or certain work visas, Medicare, Australia's public healthcare system, either doesn't fully cover you or doesn't cover you at all. A basic private health insurance plan starts at around $100 per month and can go up to $300 or more depending on the coverage level. The second is car registration. If you're planning to buy a vehicle in Australia, third-party personal injury insurance is built into the registration cost, but the annual fee can still surprise you. A standard car registered in New South Wales can cost between $400 and $800 per year just for registration. The third thing very few immigrants factor in is the wait for your first paycheck. Most Australian employers pay fortnightly or monthly. If you start a job at the beginning of the month, it could take up to 30 days before you see any money in your account. During that time, you're living off your savings. The fourth overlooked expense is setting up your living space from scratch. When you arrive with nothing, you need bed linen, kitchen utensils, basic cleaning supplies. Even buying second-hand at op shops, this can cost between $300 and $600 right at the start. Let me now give you a quick comparison between the main cities so you have a clear reference. Sydney is the most expensive. A room in a shade place runs between $300 and $450 per week. A simple lunch out costs between $15 and $25, and a coffee is around $5. But it also has the most job opportunities and often the highest salaries in many industries. Melbourne is slightly cheaper on rent, but very similar in everything else. The big advantage of Melbourne is its public transport network, which is more efficient and affordable than Sydney's. Brisbane is becoming the favorite destination for recent immigrants. The cost of living is around 20 to 25% lower than Sydney. The weather is significantly better, and job opportunities are growing fast, especially in tech and construction driven by the 2032 Olympic preparations. Perth is geographically isolated but financially very interesting. The mining sector pays high wages and the cost of living is lower than Sydney and Melbourne. The downside is that if you're not working in mining or related industries, the job market is more limited. Adelaide is the most affordable of the major capitals, with noticeably lower rents, but also fewer job opportunities compared to the other cities. This is the question everyone wants answered, but nobody answers honestly. The reality is that most people who move to Australia start feeling financially stable somewhere between month 6 and month 12. In the first 3 months, almost everyone is in the red or running very close to their limit. Between months 4 and 6, with a stable job, things start to balance out. After that, it really depends on your field, your salary, and your lifestyle. The biggest game changer is securing a job before you arrive. People who land with a signed employment contract have a completely different financial experience from those who arrive hoping to find work once they are there. If you can lock in a job before you board the plane, you can comfortably reduce your minimum reserve from $9,000 to around $5,000 or $6,000 Australian dollars. So to wrap up, to arrive in Sydney or Melbourne with real financial security, the ideal is to have between $9,000 and $12,000 Australian dollars in reserve. For Brisbane or Perth, between $7,000 and $9,000. And for regional cities, between $5,000 and $7,000. Those numbers might sound high, but consider this. A skilled worker in Australia earns on average between $60,000 and $90,000 Australian dollars per year. In many fields, within just a few months you've already made back everything you spent on the move. In the next video, I'm going to cover the job areas with the highest demand and the best salaries in Australia in 2026. Subscribe so you don't miss it. If you have any specific questions about cost of living or financial planning for the move, drop them in the comments. I read everything and I'll answer what I can.